Hello, welcome. Uh, Hi. I'm Imogen. You know, I really should figure out um how I introduce my streams because this happens every time where I start the stream and I'm like, ah, okay, there's a camera on my face. What do I say now? And I feel like I really need to like sort that one out because man, uh, like I love that I end streams, right? Um, with like the keep making art you love, right? Thanks for watching all of that. And then the start of streams, I feel entirely unofficial. There was a time when I was doing a poem of the day where I would just open the stream, read a poem, and then just kind of move past it, which I do like. Except then, like sometimes I want to talk about the the music, not music, the poem, right, and what it means. I have music on my brain lately. I might go back to that, just reading a short poem at the start. I think that's kind of cute. Um, I just need to like then I have to move forward, right, and not derail myself with like, guys, let me tell you about the analysis of that, right? But hi, Nikki. Hi, Poyo. Hi, Brian. 17 months of being subscribed to me is yeah, just baffling. Thank you. So, so very dedicated. I really should have the sub, uh, uh, what are they called? Sub badges. I need to finish those or like have those because there's a sub badge for like 1 month and then like 3 months. And there isn't like a 1 year sub badge or a 2 year sub badge, and I feel like I should have those. But whatever. I'll be honest, when I watch YouTube, I skip intros and outros. I find them lame, generic, and predictable. Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. I don't want like just a generic, like that feels stale to me. Like, hello, welcome. I'm a lot, whatever. My welcome, blah. Yeah, I don't know. But maybe doing the just opening, nothing, read poem. That's what I did for a while, and I thought that was really kind of nice. Maybe I can practice by reading the poem of mine that I just wrote, and then maybe I can sprinkle in my own work every so often, and that would be uh, a nice thing. Uh, Although I just wrote a poem, but I only wrote like half of it, so maybe I'll try to like improvise the end. I do want to share it. Um, anyway, yeah. Oh, welcome, classics or ace as well. Your message got tucked in there. Um, I will 100% derail myself. I appreciate your vote of confidence, Nikki. Um, and I think I tend to agree. Um, but if I just read it once and I don't reread it, then it um then I like the amount of analysis I can actually do is quite limited. So as long as I don't like completely geek out and start reading it like 4 times, then I'll be fine. Uh, your longer followed account got banned, Poyo. Tragic. 1 year and 3 months, 21 days and 21 hours. Um, still pretty, still a pretty long time, right? We share very similar personalities, so I know. Maybe. Although I don't know. I don't even know myself. uh, I have an anti-social media rant poem I've been working on for a while. Like, share, like, and subscribe. 3 words that now rank above "I love you." Yeah. The internet really has I feel like perverted a lot of the ways that we like interact with other people and like consume other people. It's weird. I was writing this poem for a while about like eating and the idea of consumption and being consumed by things and consuming others in different ways, um, and like and the way, I don't know, humanity consumes itself. I never really finished that one, but I feel like that's like a similar idea. Um, my favorite pen broke, which is really really sad. This happened yesterday, and I mean, like, I don't know, as a writer, right? I mean, it's just an object, right? But we get very attached to our objects, of course, as people, and the nib, this part broke off of here. This is supposed to like screw off, so like the ink cartridge is just like stuck in here. Um, but it's very sad. My favorite pen. This was my first fountain pen that I had, and it's just really big and heavy, and has like a massive ink cartridge, and I loved that, right? And basically every other fountain pen that I've gotten, I've been like, wow, this is worse than my uh, $20 Chinese Jinhao fountain pen. But I don't think I'll just straight up replace it, because I've seen online that these don't always have the best quality control, and honestly, I don't want to be buying something that'll break every 2 years. That seems quite unsustainable, um, and it's made in China, low quality generally, cheap because it employs slave labor to be made, basically, probably so, or extremely low wage labor. So there's that. Do I A, work on English homework, B, work on my college application? I think, I mean, I guess it depends on what's due sooner. Like, we can take the triage approach. That pen is now a trophy, yeah. Yeah, whatever's due first, or whatever is more pressing on your mind. Like, whichever one is giving you more grief. Like, maybe the English is due tomorrow, but it's not a big deal because you can bang it out in 20 minutes, right? But the college application is weighing on you because this deadline is creeping up or whatever. Um, just, whatever whatever has more weight, I think, is probably a good one. Uh, yeah, but the pen is dead, so now I'm using a different pen, and this one's kind of cool because it's like ultra fine, but it doesn't hold very much ink, and it has had problems with like drying out before in the very dry place that I live. So I'm unsure. I have to write like extremely lightly because of how fine and sensitive it is, which I do like. I really like that about it. I wish it held like twice as much ink. Uh I've been typing for the longest time because I can touch type. Yeah, I can mostly touch type as well. I just think that for me, like the handwriting, the tactility of it, and also the beauty, of words on a page in my hand is really nice. It's very personal, right? Definitely an analog appreciator for that. Feelings and sensory things and tactility. These are all things I like, right? Keep it. I've had a pen that hasn't worked in 7 years, but I still have it. It just chills on my desk. Survived 2 moves. Yeah, I think I'll hold on to it. It was also originally like a gift from my mom. So, uh, and it is the pen that basically wrote, like there's an era of the first, I don't know, 550 poems that I wrote. Probably 90% of them came from this pen. And that's a very like special thing, right? That that this pen has been the tool that I used to create so much art, and it's like it's been through tough times with me. I'm a huge fan of the Bic Roller Gel Fine Tip pens. Yeah, I really like fine stuff as well. Uh, I have fine liners. I was using those on collage the other day on stream. I really like the extra fine fountain pens just for how little pressure one needs to use. I love being able to use a very light hand, and that's also why I avoid like ballpoints and things. Sometimes I feel like I have to really press down and it hurts my hand. Um, blah blah blah. I do two Englishes, language and literature. Language is the only one that matters. I already got a B in it. Sounds like you're doing fine. You have plenty of time before June. Get your English done. Then just set some time aside to work on the application. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good solution, reclusy. The tricky thing, right, is when we like set aside time later for a big thing, and then that doesn't happen. That's how I feel right now with the poetry workshop that I'm teaching next week. Is I've been thinking about it a lot, but I really haven't like finalized anything. I haven't made like the handouts that I need to give to people for the workshop so they can follow along. Um, I haven't really, decided like finalize like I know what I want to say because I've said all the words before. I say the words on stream, but it's just about like locking it in. Excuse me, the poetry workshop you're teaching. Yes, Brian. I applied to teach a workshop at a local poetry festival. It's happening here in Vegas uh, in a week and a half. Um, and I got accepted for it like a couple months ago. I get paid for it, which is super cool. Love a paid gig. Um, and so the workshop that I'm teaching is about how we use analysis and then convert that into giving better feedback on poetry. Uh, because the title of the workshop is Beyond It's Good, as to say that it's good is not suitable advice. It's not or feedback. It's very bland. It's very nothing. You read your poem, you share your poem, and they're like, oh, I like it. It's really good. And that has always just like rubbed me as a non feedback. Right. It's just the automatic, um, uh, whatever. Um, Hope you've made some progress. I have made some progress since like last time I talked about this on stream. I sort of like walked around my room and just like spoke the whole workshop to my wall. Um, and it's all in my it's all the information is in my head. I know how to teach all of it. It's just sort of making that like outline roadmap so I don't go down tangents, meander, get lost, talk myself into a corner, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, so it's about how we give feedback, and so it's a little bit about like processes of analysis and taking time and rereading and like sensitivity of the page and subjectivity and all of that stuff. And then there's like a doing the actual thing component of everyone sort of making observations, analyzing the poem, and then sort of talking about how we convert those into how we would respond to the poem and how we would give someone, nuanced uh, thoughts based in like an analytic framework. So, kind of cool. Uh, and someone just hit me up on Instagram with an opportunity for a paid gig playing saxophone with like a little jazz combo, um, uh, which is like another $100, which is cool. Um, and that's in a also in a week and a half. It's the day after the workshop. Uh, Issue being that like I have not played like straight up jazz in a long time, since like high school, and I was fine. I was passable at jazz, and then I went to music school and it was classical. Then I stopped playing for a while, and then I've been playing in the punk band. Um, and and I need to like really like freshen up in the next week in terms of jazz improvisation and just the feel, and I need to be listening to a lot. Uh, and it's like it's mildly like it's only terrifying if I don't sort of you know get myself to a place of competence, at which point there could be a real performative disaster waiting for me. But if I practice, if I sort of um, you know lock in, then I'll be fine. So like all of these things, they're coming up and they're big and they're sort of imposing and creeping up on me. But uh, really, they're not an incredible amount of work, and it's just the fact that they are a deadline that has been sort of pressing on me. Because I don't know, in the couple year healing process, it's been a lot of life without deadlines, without like really heavy like obligations, and I'm relearning how that works. Stream is part of that, right? Having a schedule. Um, it's awesome, exciting, fun. Yeah, yeah, I do agree. um, the classics are ace. You submitted a poem, right? Um, for stream. Are you Liam on Discord sending always? In which case I think we'll read that one today because you're new to the stream generally, and we haven't read your stuff. Yes, I did, and I am. Okay. And then maybe after that we'll read like a Nikki poem. I know you have a couple. Um, and I'll also share the poem that I wrote because I said that earlier that I would do that. Um, and maybe I'll try to improvise an ending to it. It doesn't have a title yet because it's not finished. If I had to give it a title right now, um, actually, like how it feels is no, I don't know. Slowly, maybe just slowly. I'm not sure. I will spend an hour deciding what to wear to the dark theater. I will open 3 new books in hope of finding myself in their pages. I will lay awake in the pressure pounding in my head, pouring through my heart, and when I manage to wake up, in the place I always come back to, I will wash my hair, massaging down to the roots, so gently that each strand relaxes and falls over the breasts I used to want and now just know I have. I will shave my legs, slowly, because otherwise I won't like how it feels, but I like how it feels this way. And when I manage to dry it all off, I will start falling again, away from myself and into cameras and spotlights and into the outside. And I will be looking for something again and going somewhere, toward someone. And when I look into their eyes, I'll feel that pounding again. And it'll keep me up at night again and again and again until I wake up again. in that place I always come back to. There might be like a few more verses of like the place I come back to, and then the waking up, and then the sleeping or whatever. But that's the idea. Um, these two modes going back and forth. Uh, yeah, that last part was off the dome, but that's the idea. Um, but we can read, and it doesn't have a title really yet. Um, um, but yeah, we'll read Liam's poem, or the classics are Ace. How do I do this? This button, which is gonna be a black screen, and I need to fix it, and then we can read that thing. The classics are Ace, Liam. What does that mean? The classics are Ace. That's like a really interesting name that feels sort of evocative and interesting, and I just have no idea like uh, what what it means for a classic to be Ace. That's an unfamiliar notion. You know, and I'm trying to get this camera to be straight because it's never straight, and that is always uh, a bit annoying to me, and it's never zoomed in the right amount. Blah blah blah. I don't know. Okay, probably slang for awesome or something, but I'm 42 and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Never heard Ace used in that concept, in that context. Mm. It's a niche reference. When I chose the username, I was a huge fan of Doctor Who. Okay, I figured it was something like a reference. Specifically the classic series. There's a character called Ace who also used the word as an adjective. I see. So you would call something Ace, or he would call something Ace, and you're making reference to his way of doing that. That's cool. I have never, I would probably pick up on this if I was a Doctor Who individual, but I've never watched any of it, never consumed uh, that media. I feel like, I don't know. People have told me it's like something I would probably like a lot, but I I have not, and I'm not sure I will. The extent of what I know about Doctor Who is through the Doctor Who Magic the Gathering cards that exist for some reason. It took a long time and a girlfriend to get me to watch it. Fair enough. Yeah, sometimes that's always a good reason to watch something, is to watch it with someone and to share that experience of that artistic experience, right? Calling things aces was a 60s thing. My mom and dad used to say something was aces if it was great. Wild. Aces. That's kind of fun. I love like using slang that's not from my time. Like lately in the last few months I've been big on saying catch you on the flip side. I just love that phrase. Right? Uh uh right? Like it's just a really fun thing, and it's like not my generation, not something I ever said. I don't even know why I say it, but it's awesome. Why aces? You live in Vegas. Aces are the best cards. Yeah. Um, Shorthand for coming up aces. I see. I see. That all that all makes a good deal of sense, right? um, so this poem. from Liam, from the classics R8s. Uh, so, I guess I will ask you if there's any context you would like to volunteer about that poem, this poem. Uh, Not so much explanation, right? I do think like I've been thinking about this and like thinking about recent streams. I think explanation from the author takes away a lot from analysis, but like context and background sometimes is useful, right? Particularly like cultural context and background, which upon a skim of this poem, I don't think it has too much of that. But yeah, wrote it about a year ago, dealing with unrequited love. Okay, a year ago. Um, that's dope. That's dope. And I'd imagine you still like it if you're sending it to me a year after writing, and I think that's good. Um, yeah, yeah, a year ago. I don't even know what I was writing a year ago. Um, yeah, so I'd say we just go into reading it, into talking about it. Um, this is always short little poem, just 12 lines. But yeah, just 12 lines. You've always been my friend, yet I'm now waiting for the end. Always found attraction from high and low, yet I've not found a way to let go. You've always built me up when we chat, yet I've never felt I deserve all that. Always felt guilt so strange, yet I never ever want you to change. I've always wanted more from you, yet it hurts to be so untrue. Always thought about if I should just leave, yet you've always been so kind to me. Always. Always. Always been my friend. Always built me up. Always. Lots of always in this poem, which probably makes it a a suitable title here, right? This is sort of what's going on. This always. Um, yeah, and we have like, some things that jump out, right, as happening at first notice. We have this like rhyme scheme, just end line rhyme scheme, friend and logo. uh More colors, more colors. Chat that strange change. You true and leave me. Right. And this poem is, I'd say, fairly straightforward, right? You've always been my friend, yet now I'm waiting for the end, right? This waiting for the end of this concept of friendship. Always found attraction from high to low, yet I've never found a way to let go, right? This desire for something more, which would infringe upon this friendship. You've always built me up when we chat, yet I never felt I deserve all that. Always felt guilt so strange, yet I never ever want you to change. I've always wanted more, to be more for you, yet it hurts to be so untrue, right? This untruth of of the wanting more, of the wanting the friendship to be something it is not. Always thought about if I should just leave. You've always been so kind to me. So we're in this sort of sticky situation of wanting that to be a relationship, of it not being, and then we have this interesting thing in the middle, right? This lack of deserving This sort of feeling of inadequacy, right? I feel like we talk about this on stream often, um, right? This idea of like inadequacy in these like confessional poems, and I think that is fairly common, and that's common in love. I was watching a short video on YouTube the other day, um, that was talking about Lacan, the philosopher, and his definition of love, which is like love is uh, giving something you don't have to someone who doesn't want it. Like it's his definition has it rooted in like the comfort of two people and each other's inadequacy. And that sort of makes me think of that sentiment. Just that maybe just that it was recent, right? Um, but yeah, yeah, it's simple, which is probably why I think it holds up well. Yeah, that's an interesting point, right? Uh, Simplicity and holding up, right? The other day we read Walt Whitman's "Oh Captain, My Captain," uh, and it is like on like it's a very simple poem. It's very straightforward. It's very to the point. Uh, and even like before that, you know, a couple weeks ago we read Harlem by Langston Hughes. These very like simple poems, and I think simplicity does have a great capacity to endure. I mean, we see it in like the greatest extent with like the tradition of haiku, or even with the idea of something as small as like a one line proverb or an adage, that these things really like have a way of persisting, right? And I think there's a, you know, I mean, this happens for, I think my idea of why is that like these things are accessible. If something is simple, many people can understand it. Many people can read that, and it can sort of resonate with them, and it doesn't, require this great feat of thought or puzzling through or that kind of thing. And that's a very good thing about simplicity, right? And the tricky thing about simplicity is that sometimes it comes at the expense of, well, like what's the opposite of simplicity, right? Complexity. And this is an interesting, line that we toe as artists, because complexity, right, is often very, for the person who engages with the complexity, right, this can be like a very rewarding thing. But complexity is also fundamentally limiting, where if something is too complex, then people are unable to understand it. People are unable to like even parse the meaning of that thing. And it can just feel, complexity can feel, what's the word? What's the word for like kind of stuck up, pretentious, right? Where simplicity is fundamentally usually very like unpretentious, unless it gets so simple. Then like sometimes we see that with these like 2-word poems and stuff, that people would describe that as like pretentious. And simplicity, right, as opposed to limiting, it's accessible, but sometimes, right, it can feel empty, and this is something we want to avoid. And everything is gonna fall somewhere like on this axis. Yeah, something can be simple yet layered. That's certain. I think this might actually be a triangle: simplicity, complexity, and layered. Interesting. Um, yeah, and I guess it depends on like what we apply these words to. We can have complex, language and really difficult to parse words, but a very like simple underlying message underneath. Um, and we can have very simple words to have it be like linguistically accessible, and we can have like a complexity of interpretation or whatever. um Layered is often synonymous with complexity, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it maybe depends on like where the complexity lies, right? Because poems have like all these different parts. um and parts of poems can be very simple, parts of poems can be very complex. um and I think ideally, right, I mean, I definitely enjoy poetry that has very simple words and then has, as you say, Brian, a layering, where it can be like parsed and new things can be discovered about it, and there's many ways to interpret it, and there's many directions it can go, right? But everyone falls somewhere different on these things, right? Some people like really difficult, kind of verbosity. Some people like the puzzle of, the language of T.S. Eliot's poetry itself, where it can feel very oblique, it can feel very unintuitive. But everyone decides, maybe not decides, but like falls somewhere on this axis for a variety of different things. Uh, and that's, I don't know. That's just a thought, I guess. I don't know how to um, bring it to this, right? But we have some fairly like straightforward words. Nothing in this poem is going to be, difficult from like a dictionary language comprehension perspective. And I think that's like a good thing, right? When you say the classics are race, that simplicity can help something hold up, I think that is true, right? Um, yeah, and then maybe there's the question of layering, of other complexity within this poem, and where that might lie, if that lies, if that even needs to be, right? Because there doesn't have to be complexity at all in a poem. Poems can just be simple, straight through, personal, whatever, and that's fine. Um, right? Like that's certainly allowed, right? No one's forcing anyone to write complicated poetry. Um, I'm gonna read it again though, because I sort of read it once and then we ventured over in this direction, and but it's a useful discussion, useful groundwork, right? Always. You've always been my friend. Yet now I'm waiting for the end. Always found attraction from high and low, yet I've not found a way to let go. You've always built me up when we chat. I just want to underline some things. You always built me up when we chat, yet I never felt I deserve all that. Always felt guilt so strange, yet I never ever want you to change. I've always wanted to be more for you, yet it hurts to be so untrue. Always thought about if I should just leave, yet you've always been so kind to me. You've always been my friend. And I like this idea of I'll get to that in a second. I started trying to use ambiguity to add that simplicity, Yeah, ambiguity interacts nicely with simplicity, I think. I don't know why, but for me, this made me want to know, what does the person this poem is talking about think of you? What's their inner monologue? Like, I sort of want the response. Yeah, I think this poem definitely raises various questions that we're like interested in, right? It's simple, and so I think that might leave us like asking questions, looking for other things. Like, that's something a simple poem can do. We can even think of the haiku, so simple that you're almost forced to start engaging with it, asking questions, wanting a response. Um, and yeah, like, what about the other person? Um, the other person is definitely a question that we might ask. We might ask about any one of these lines. You've always been my friend, but what does that friendship look like? Like, this poem exists on a fairly abstract level, right? Here's another axis that poetry adopts. Um, Abstraction against concreteness, I guess, um, is another place. And I think this poem falls as like fairly abstract. We're talking about notions like friendship. And I can't see friendship, I can't hold friendship. We're talking about the end, we're talking even about high and low and attraction, um, letting go, right? We do have this like chatting, building one up, that has like a concreteness to it. But even we have this like deserving feeling, always felt, right? Guilt and like the strangeness of that guilt. Um, Never ever want you to change, even that, right? We have change as the notion of like that place in between where we are here and where we are uh, later, right? Change is that spot in between. And then the concreteness there, rather than change, is the first state and the other state. Um, so that exists, right, on that level of abstraction, even like wanting to be more. And I think abstraction is something that creates questions, right? Um, again, untrue and hurt. Like, hurt is a big feeling. Um, these many of these are abstract things. Even kindness. Kindness is this idea, but a kind action, right? That looks like something. So so we might ask of this poem, in addition to that, other person's perspective, or engaging with it on that topical level, we might look at it on this level of abstraction. What does it, mm, like, we talk about the experience, but we would ask, what is the experience like? What does, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it uh, taste like? Right? What is the flavor of that non-deserving? What is the particular sound of that inadequacy? Right? I think these are questions we jump to. I think the opposite of abstraction would maybe be specificity. Uh, Maybe. I mean, abstraction can be very specific, right? I mean, if we're like, let's say we're talking about something good and something evil, right? We can be very specific about um, what that evil is like in a very abstract, non-experiential sense. Uh, and I think concrete things can be non-specific, or I'm just like talking about objects in space, and they maybe lack some sort of like any specifics about them. Um, opposite of specificity is vagueness. Yeah, we're creating a, you know, many of these. I do agree with Brian on that one, I think. Specificity and vagueness. Um, but, I think these are interesting things to think about, particularly the classics, or Ace or Liam, or I don't know what to call you. Um, right, because I think you're a fairly, I mean, I think you said last stream, right? You're mostly a filmmaker. Um, and then you're kind of dabbling into poetry. Um, Also, hi, Catholic. So you're kind of, dabbling in this art occasionally. Um, and I think, it can be useful to think about all the different ways that, you know, the poem can work and like understand like the worlds that are out there. I also think, uh, hmm, hmm. I wonder if I want to connect this to film, and writing poetry and thinking about poetry in the way that one might think of a film. I'm not sure if I want to go in that direction, but I'll stew on that. Anyway, so concreteness can involve metaphors, imagery, and the five senses and forests. You said earlier this poem needs the word forest in it. Uh, you like the forest, Catholic. I like the forest too. Um, Most of the time I write poetry when I have high emotion, and I wrote this one at a time when I felt fairly emotional. Yeah, yeah, and I think these are definitely the thoughts that would be running through one's head in this like point of emotion, right? These like big, because emotion and like really intense emotion is often like these really big feelings, right? You've always been my friend, right? Um, I haven't found a way to let go. You've always been so kind to me, right? These are like the big um, emotional thoughts that we have, and I think like uh, this is like a very direct kind of outward expression of those thoughts, right? And I think that's really good, right? Because it's like getting those thoughts expressed and out in that very fundamentally right confessional manner, where it's like I'm feeling these things and I'm putting them on the page, and that's good, right? Um, and I think, right, maybe what I'm getting at with specifically talking about abstraction, right, is when you write a poem, you've always been my friend. Yes, anyone can relate probably to having someone in their life who has been a friend for a long time or whatever. Many people can relate to this idea of unrequitedness, not deserving, inadequacy. And so in that way, right, you're engaging with very good material for poetry because it's things that, you know, you're experiencing very intensely that other people have probably experienced very intensely. Um, and I think the cool thing about poetry and the cool thing about like being a human uh, and being an artist, right, is humans, we all experience like sort of the same fundamental set of emotions. We have all of these. We have like sad, we have like love, we have like inadequate. We do all these different things. And we all do them roughly like the same way because we all feel them and we all talk about them, and that's really like one of the best things we can leverage as a poet is that everyone feels these shared set of emotions. But the cool thing about uh, people, right, is that my sadness and your sadness and this other person's sadness, they happen in different ways. They happen for different reasons. And they very much like manifest differently, right? Like the way friendship is for me and the person who's always been my friend is going to look different from the person who's always been your friend, right? For me, maybe friendship has this aspect of this like constancy where I can always return to them, and even where I'm a very erratic person. Uh, uh, when I leave for a time and disappear into the isolation of being a hermit, these friends who are my always friends are the ones I can come back to, right? That's maybe a brief way I would describe that. And I could even, get into further detail and those actual experiences and like the, whatever, right? And for, Nikki, right, we'll say, or for Brian, or for, you, right, Liam, everyone has a different version of friendship, and yet we can all unify them under the shared feeling of that being friendship. And that's really cool, right? Where if we get into the specifics and we break down, the actual maybe tactile feelings of the specific or the concrete feelings of you've always been my friend, right? Then you're still going to share the sentiment of someone who's always been your friend because that's shared between people. People can empathize in that way and they can read the poem and draw from that. But then they also get that extra layer, maybe, as Brian was saying earlier, layers. Maybe that was Nikki. I don't know. I don't know who was talking about layers. They get the extra layer of like your experience and something fundamentally unique to you. And I think there's something like deeply, kind of terrifying about that, right? Where if you talk about, there's something safe in abstraction. You can talk about like, you've always been my friend. And, we see this thing that like we understand, but we don't get very much of like you, right, in that. But if you really dug into the way that you as a human in a concrete way experience someone having always been your friend or someone who will always be your friend, then it shows the reader a new experience that they might not have understood before, and it shows the reader something like truly vulnerable about you. And I think there's something like beautiful about taking that really heightened state of emotion, right? And to not just look at the emotion, not just look at like the, always thought about if I should just leave, or it hurts to be so untrue, to really like sit with that hurt and unpack it and truly like interrogate one's own hurt, right? I think that's maybe a way we could describe poetry, is this like interrogation of those raw emotions, and this expansion of them. Because I really think this poem offers, like, it has all these ideas. You've always been my friend. Yeah, now I'm waiting for the end. And I feel like this couplet itself, right, has probably enough emotion in it, right? I presume when you write that, there's so much going on in your head, there's so much swirling around, that this could be probably an entire poem in itself. If we dig into the experience of friendship, if we dig into why it's always, if we dig into the end and what the end looks like, and the waiting and the excruciating feeling of waiting, um, and that could be probably exploded into a whole poem. And I think probably every couplet within this, right, if we engage with specificity or concreteness or whatever in that way, could be expanded to that degree, right? And I mean, I'd invite you to try that, right? Just because it's another way to write, um, and it's definitely hard. It's different, um, but that's that's maybe like an answer to a question like this, um, about that concreteness. Um, because I think you might find it rewarding. I think it is really rewarding to take this like big idea, this big feeling, this big knot in the chest, and like pull at it, um, and really like dig into the details of that. And it's very vulnerable too. Um, but maybe thinking about film now, right? Because you're a film person, um, and I don't know. Maybe I'll just trying to think of a film I can use as an example here. Uh, hmm. Maybe it's not a specific example kind of thing. Um, but film fundamentally is concrete, right? In film, right, what are you trying to do? You're showing like individual scenes. You're showing these like shots of places, of people, of actions, right? Actions, places, people, whatever, right? We have concrete experiences. And then we even have like sound, right, where we have specific dialogue, where we have, music that has a certain concrete sound to it. And all of these things like point toward bigger notions, right? Um, the music can sort of imply that we should feel in some way. The dialogue can point toward something the character is thinking that can't be shown on screen. The way that we shoot a scene with the people can tell us, about their emotion. They can tell us about there are some very abstract art house movies for sure. Um, and that's a good point. um, but right, like the film fundamentally takes the concrete and then like the visual stuff, and then turns it into something where we might interpret feelings from it. We might interpret the abstract, communicating something like love or loss or grief or bigger, more complex notions, like maybe a poem like this, right? And poetry kind of works in the opposite way. I think on a very like fundamental level, um, where the scenes and the sounds and all of this, right? We're fundamentally working on the medium of words, of text. And text is inherently fairly abstract, where like words aren't an experience. words don't show us something on their own that reflects reality, right? Words are an abstraction of reality. And usually I think poetry like takes this abstract thing and then tries to, often, not always, communicate something concrete, right? So it's sort of moving in the other direction, where we want someone to take this abstraction and these words and these like vague, squiggly letters, um, and we want that to like transmit visceral feeling, visceral experience. Not always, but often. Uh, and like I wonder what a poem from you would look like, right? Given that have these like big level experiences, these very intense emotional, sort of outputs, um, what it would look like if you wrote a poem that was like a film, right? A poem where the words were scenes and the words were sounds and actions and sort of, placed us in a space where we could picture something unfolding like that. Um, I'd imagine like you would probably create some very interesting things, like a narrative poem. Narrative poems are one way to do that, right? Where we are kind of going through, scene by scene, something happening. But some poems exist within a single moment, right? Um, where there isn't necessarily a narrative. Maybe it's an appreciation of like a single frame, right? Um, I think, I guess I'm thinking of like Mary Oliver, right? Uh, I like to go to her for uh, this kind of stuff. Um, I love Mary Oliver. Um, Let me find a good maybe example. Mary Oliver's very concrete. Um, what's that? What's the one on like her back porch? This might take me a second. It also might be in the other the other book, which doesn't help. It also might not be in either of them book, either of the books. Um, the Gift. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, there's like a grasshopper poem, right? Oh wait, is this the one I'm looking for? I don't think this is what I'm looking for. Sorry. Sorry for the me just flipping through a book. I feel like any one of these is fine. But okay, we're gonna do The Summer Day. It's about a grasshopper. Um who made the world? Who made the swan? We'll do it here. Look, I drew a grasshopper on it. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand. Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she shifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what prayer is. I do not know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? The Summer Day. And I think this poem is like a useful example because we have very concrete images, right? We have like the grasshopper being a grasshopper and doing grasshopper things. We have these ideas of like paying attention, falling into the grass, kneeling down in the grass, being idle and blessed, strolling through the fields, right? Actions. And then these fundamentally, these are sort of placed next to abstractions. Who made the world, right? These sort of questions. Like, what else should I have done, right? These questions are abstract. And the way that these are presented with and against the concrete is maybe sort of like how, the film, right, has the actual video on the screen and the actual audio and the actual, like, dialogue and all of these things. Or maybe not the dialogue. And maybe the abstract is the dialogue, right? Where the things that we're showing on the screen, and then these sort of like abstract ideas and this, like, I don't know, sort of explanation of feeling and this human element, they sort of like intersect with each other in some capacity. And it doesn't have to be a narrative, right? That poem isn't necessarily a narrative. It has a narrative within it, right? This grasshopper doing a thing. And it maybe has a narrative within it of Mary Oliver questioning. But it also has very non-narrative things within it. It has stuff like, your lines, right? This sort of always thought about if I should just leave, right? This like abstract questioning. And I think the concrete really serves to like bring us down to that experiential level. And then we have this like conversation. And when we put poems on these like, I don't know, these like axes, it's very difficult. These aren't great. These are abstractions. Because like, where does that poem fall on abstraction and concreteness? It's doing both at the same time. And I think maybe that's a way, maybe someone would call that layering, that we can have abstraction and we can have concreteness. We can have simplicity and we can have complexity. We can have vagueness and we can have specificity. And that's a really cool thing about poetry, right? Is it, like, words are very flexible and we can do a lot with them as long as we, sort of, I don't know, play around. The grasshopper is effectively the protagonist. Yeah. And maybe that's like, right, within film. I don't know how you think about filmmaking and how you go about that, or film writing, or I don't remember exactly what it is you do in that regard. But yeah, to think about like who is the protagonist of this poem, right? And this poem has a protagonist, sort of, the speaker, but it's almost like POV, right? Where we don't see any of the speaker and we don't necessarily see any of our, I don't know, antagonist, deuteragonist, our other person, where we're like really existing on like a black screen in the thoughts of this protagonist. And that can be like very useful. That can be a very cool thing to do. But, if this were a poem, or if this were a film, like maybe you would show this protagonist remembering and recalling the scenes of always being one's friend. Maybe you would show a scene, right, within this poem. It could be, a scene could be as short as a line, right? You can say an entire scene within a line, which is really cool. To show I've never felt I deserve all that, like when I did this. And maybe not that simple in terms of language, but that could even work. And that might be a something you find valuable, but I'm not sure. 'Cause like, something that helps me think about poetry sometimes is placing it within the idea of musicality as a musician. And I think allowing the other ways we create art to interact um, with each other can be really valuable way to grow very quickly. And then, as you write, if you write a poem that's film like, you can also write a film that's poem like, or you can write dialogue that's poem like. Um, and I think, this expansion of like the scope of our art, right? A poem that is song like, a song that is poem like, a poem that is novel like, a novel that is film like, and a film that is, you know, like a symphony, right? These are cool. These are interesting ways to think. Um, Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton might also be excellent people to read. Yeah, I mean, there's so many excellent people to read. I've never read any Anne Sexton. I don't think at all. Um, you should check out Mad Girl's Love Song by Sylvia Plath. I've also read like no Sylvia Plath personally. um, but it's also interesting. Everyone is obviously throwing many recommendations for things you could read, right? Uh, Ace, Liam, classics. I need to stop doing that. I just need to decide. Um, and right, reading poetry can just kind of blow open the possibilities of what can be done in the same way that you watch like a I don't know, like a Tarkovsky film, and you're like, what? Like you can do that on a movie screen? Like you can do a movie in that way? Um like I watched Satan Tango in a theater. I don't know if you're familiar with that film, Liam. Uh I feel like I have a vague assumption that since you're a film person, you know everything about film. Um but it's like 7 hours long, this movie, and it totally like blew open like my conception of what film can do. Uh, and I feel like reading some poetry, right? I mean, it does the same thing. Reading more, like consumption and then creation. They're very intertwined. Hi Imogen, nice to see you. Hello Marissa. How do I feel about stream of consciousness writing? Um, I feel like I've read like probably not that much stream of consciousness. Uh, and so that's point number one. Um, I love the idea of it, and I think you know I mean it's just another way to write, right? It's sort of like saying like how do I feel about um confessional poetry, right? There's really like um there's confessional poetry that I like, and there's confessional poetry that I don't like. There's probably stream of consciousness that I like and SOC that I don't like, right? Where it's a vehicle for art to be created. Um, and I haven't read that much of it, so I'm just neutral. I remember being really taken by John Keats' poetry when I briefly studied it in middle school. Yeah, then um, yeah, Keats is awesome. I mean, I haven't read that much Keats. Uh, it's funny. I feel like four, we've mentioned like four poets on stream, and I'm like, yeah, I haven't read much of them. Yeah, I haven't read much of them. But it's such a massive, expansive world of things that one can read. So uh, that's a cool thing. Um, yeah, I think like finding like the things you like and don't like can be a very good guide um, for how to write. Not necessarily that it should be entirely like emulation, but knowing what you like is very helpful. It can be very therapeutic. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of things you can read. Oh yeah, I go through that all the time, back and forth of like there's a million things to read, and I I need to read them all, and it's awful, and then I'm reading, and usually it's okay, right? to just to just do the action, to return to the concrete. Uh, yeah. Um, basically, basically, when I read this poem, Liam, right? I read it, and you know, as an expression of of your emotion, and as like this outlet, and as this uh just like raw thing, like it's awesome, right? Because we are just like laying bare the feelings that are on one's mind. um and I also read it, and I think that um you know like being able to do this, right? Being able to just say like these are the things I feel them. I'm going to put them on the page, and then I'm going to like share them with someone is incredibly, incredibly uh, admirable. And it is like definitely the prerequisite for just like you're writing, you know, poetry, right? You're doing the thing. You're writing, you're sharing, you're like laying bare the soul. And I think that's like step one, right? And you've like accomplished this like initial um, action, this initial poetic motion uh, wonderfully, right? And then, right, the beautiful thing after that, right, is this like step two of experimentation, and truly like um right, because you have like the concept, the emotions, the feeling, and then now the beautiful thing next is you get to go like play with the words, and you get to say, how do I take these words and use them to express these feelings in different ways. And I think that's like very exciting, right? I mean, obviously I've written out a million different ways to take this poem in other directions. And I don't want that to feel like, oh, this poem needs something else. This poem like needs more or needs to be changed, because like this poem is, right, this sort of piece of art in itself. It is this completed expression of emotion, right? Um, and I think that it demonstrates, right, that like now you're ready to go and do more with poetry, and to truly like start experimenting and start exploring, and starting to say, here are my raw emotions dumped out on the page. um, how do I branch out from there, right? Like this is like a foundation, and it's great. Um, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Um, and like you're doing poetic things, right? You're rhyming, right? You've always been my friend. I'm waiting for the end. I've always found attraction from high and low, yet I've not found a way to let go. We're doing rhyming at the end. We're doing like repetition of found, found. We're doing repetition of always, 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 right? We're doing these like poetic things. We're using these devices. Um, even some alliteration. Now, waiting, always, right? This like W thing. Um, we're engaging with poetic devices. And that means like you in some capacity know these things. You have access to these skills and these ideas. Um, and then to say like, you know, how else can we play with rhymes? From the end rhyme, the friend, the end, the low, the go, to like inserting that within the line and the start of the line, and alternating lines and different structures and different frameworks. I think is a direction that like you definitely can go, right? You're definitely ready to go. And as like an artist more broadly than a poet, um, right? Doing film, doing poetry, right? You're an artist broadly. Um, I think, you know, I would strongly encourage you to like really just start like breaking the mold and experimenting with this, because I don't know, that'd be cool, because there's a very like unique perspective that you have. Um, yeah. Hmm. I mean, that's some thoughts. I think that's a lot of thoughts around the poem and inspired by the poem. Um, and I think that's what happens, right? When we uh generally with like simplicity, right? Is simplicity invites us to look past it into other spaces, to ask other questions, to have the conversations around it. And I hope some of these things were helpful. Um, some of these ideas, some of these thoughts. And I don't know if you or anyone have questions or thoughts, if there are things about the text that I don't know I could or should or can talk about. Um, I should mention that obviously I wrote it a year ago and then didn't post it anywhere until now. So I kind of initially wrote it to help me cope before I discovered it again and recently decided to put it out there. Yeah, and that's awesome. I think um uh yeah, like rediscovering old stuff and sharing it. That's awesome. And I think I've seen on your Substack that you're writing other stuff more recently. Um, but yeah, sharing art and sharing poetry, sharing like a part of oneself is an incredibly vulnerable thing to do, and an incredibly like difficult thing to do. And and I think so like thank you, right? Thank you for sharing it. And uh you should, I think, or you certainly can, um it is certainly allowed, I don't know, uh to be like very proud of yourself, I think, for doing this difficult thing. It's extremely admirable, and I mean, like, everyone who shares stuff here, but especially something, you know, old and raw, something that's kind of distant, um, because then there's this like layer of sharing a part of yourself that's another part of yourself. Uh, like these are really really great things, and then to like not only that, but to share it in a way that it's subject to scrutiny, right? Is all the more uh, admirable, right? Um, Hi, Bushka. Uh, like, um, because like in many cases you can like share a poem, right? And you read it and you don't necessarily get like so much response, so much interrogation of it. And so to share it in this setting where like, the microscope is really like placed on uh, you, right? That's a really, really good thing to do. Da, 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 da. Good for you, you put it into the world, yes. I didn't used to share poetry outside therapy. My therapist helped me open up. Thank you for sharing with us. Yes, many, many thank yous to Liam for sharing. Putting your poetry out there is ace. Yes. Ooh, this is such a lovely, simple, heartfelt poem. Yeah. I think those are really excellent ways to describe it, right? Like it's simple. It speaks to those emotions, um, and yeah, I'd imagine it was a really helpful experience to write, right? To like unload that from one's mind, from one's heart, from one's chest, and to share a poem like that, right? These like simple poems, these very confessional. I'd encourage you to look that. I mean, based off of this poem, there's a school of poetry, or a tradition of poetry or a style of poetry, um, which is described as confessional. Um, and I mean, this is like a big thing. There's a lot of confessional poets. But since, this is sort of your impulse, your way of writing, this like, these are my feelings, putting them out. Uh, I think that, confessional people are a good place to go. Um, Sylvia Plath has been mentioned, right? I'm pretty sure she is generally quite confessional in her writing. Um, who else was mentioned? I found Sharon Olds to be very confessional. Um, I think, I mean, you already mentioned that you like Keats. So read Keats, Anne Sexton is a confessional poet. Um, there's, I don't know who else. Um, what's her name? Uh, okay, you say Catholic Adrienne Rich. Never heard that name. Adrienne Rich. Um, I've found somewhat that like some of Sonia Sanchez's work is fairly confessional. Um, she's really cool. Uh, Robert Lowell, yeah. Robert Lowell. These are all names. Don't get too overwhelmed. You can just sort of like choose one randomly. Um, and or not at all, right? These place you sort of within what you're trying to do. We can also like go explore other things, right? Mary Oliver is this very like and she is sort of confessional, but very like nature, very concrete, very external, meditative. You know, you have like the beatniks who are really like describing things as is, very concrete. Might be an interesting direction to go. Allen Ginsberg, Charles Bukowski, for like contrast against what you do. Um, I wouldn't advise jumping into verse immediately. I think reading modern poets is better usually. Um, Best modern confessional poem on YouTube from Brave New Voices, Alyssa Harris's That Girl. I feel like um I saw that pop up on my YouTube feed once. I'll tell you, I had to study beat poetry in college, was not a fan. I'm a big fan of beat poetry, myself. Pablo Neruda. Yeah. Neruda's excellent. And if you speak Spanish, even better. Um, uh, you've definitely seen it. Okay. It doesn't surprise me that you are. That's interesting. I mean, I've read a bunch of Bukowski on stream, right? Um, Bukowski was my introduction to poetry, unfortunately. Uh, that really, really did me in. Um, and these are all fairly like straightforward, run of the mill, semi modern poets. Um, you'd also look into like modern, like very contemporary stuff that's doing much more experimental things. I mean, there's so much to read. I just think reading is great. I like recommending books. Um, yeah. Can you read something interesting? I feel like that's I am capable of reading interesting things. I do so all the time. I would consider poetry to be interesting. Um yeah, I think we have been reading interesting things, or an interesting thing, this poem. But interest is subjective. Ah, Marissa, we said that at the same time, or it popped up at the same time. Um, what next now? What next? We're probably gonna read another poem, probably an interesting poem even. Uh, so that's the thing. Unless anyone has other questions about this, any other comments for the classics are ace. Um, Otherwise, thank you, and so very much appreciate you sending your work to be seen, to be scrutinized. um, which one? I think we're reading probably a poem by Nikki, who's in chat. I don't know who in chat has things submitted right now. If anyone else has things submitted, uh, do like tell me, because I do lose track. I know that Nikki has multiple things as usual. Um, you have something, Kasich? Okay, we'll read yours because it's probably been in there longer. Um, I've also we read Nikki pretty recently, I think. Anyway, this was always by Liam, by The Classics Are Ace. You've always been my friend, yet I'm now waiting for the end. Always found attraction from high and low, yet I've not found a way to let go. You've always built me up when we chat, yet I've never felt I deserve all that. Always felt guilt so strange, yet I never ever want you to change. I've always wanted to be more for you, yet it hurts to be so untrue. Always thought about if I should just leave, yet you've always been so kind to me. Always. by the classic series. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. I think everyone does. And excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Can you make a poem right on the spot now? I've done it sometimes. I've done it before. As long as your analyses of poetry are wonderful to experience, plus your reading style is measured, emotional, and brings a strong level of artistry. Thank you, Bushka. That's very kind. Freestyle. Yeah. I mean, maybe I can try to. I've done it before. I usually need something to. I'm gonna think for a second about what's been on my mind. um, like usually it helps me to have an emotion, a feeling, a concept. Um, hmm. Okay. Y'all can throw words in chat. Maybe I'll try to bring them in to the poem. I feel like that's kind of fun. Um, I'm trying not to fall back into dreaming again. To slip into a space of unburdened, racing thought. Trying to place myself within presentness. Okay. That's the idea. We're getting there. It's really hard. Okay. Autumn turned winter. Okay. It's really hard to freestyle poetry, I think. But autumn turned winter is cool. Okay. I'll try to do it for a couple minutes. I'm watching myself wake up. Everything emerging again. As winter turns to spring, and I stumble into new being. I begin to become something more in motion, something less stagnant, something sacred. A sprout from a seed, a leaf from a stalk, seeking sunlight. Hoping again, growing again. And as I do, and as I move, spring turns to summer. And the sun beats down. And the edges dry up and crack. I find myself drying out, falling over pages and pages of the same things, of repetition, of longer days. Of 110-degree haze, of pain, of burning, of wanting to slow down, of feeling the friction and not being able to fight it, just waiting till summer turns autumn, waiting for the leaves to fall, for me to fall, for parts of me to stop falling out. And when they stop, find a place of rest amidst the mud. The rain's finally coming down again. There's mud again. I'm leaving an imprint again in autumn. When I do, I find I'm still seeking. I find I'm still searching. Still waiting for something ahead. And when autumn turns winter, and I don't have anything left, I'll rest, but I'll be looking towards spring again. Autumn to winter. There's an ad break happening, so I'll be back in like an ad's gonna start like right now. So 3 minutes, stand up, stretch, whatever. I need to have a snack. That was kind of fun. Y'all can ask me to do that more often. It's good practice. Um, but yeah, get some water, get a snack, go to the bathroom, whatever, stretch, something. I'll be back. Hello. Um, it was annoying. I was like trying to race to the end of that poem before like the ad break hit. um, yeah. I'm leaving an imprint again. When I do, I find him still seeking. I find him still searching, still waiting for something I've had. And when autumn turns winter, I don't have anything left. I'll rest, but I'll be waiting for spring again. Yeah, a lot of seeking, waiting, searching in that poem. Um, just the always going forward, always looking for something. Um, I guess that's been on my mind. Uh, I don't know, just riffing on that same theme, right? Um, you should make it one of your redeemables because that was glorious. Yeah. I mean, the thing that I don't like with the redeemables, right, for stuff like that, is if I'm in the middle of a poem, an analysis of someone's work, right, um, then someone redeems it, right, and then, I mean, I can say, right, okay, you redeemed it. That'll happen after, right? That'll happen after the this analysis over, and maybe that's fine. Then just that's like the stipulation of it. Because I am generally fine with just like you know do the freestyle, just like kind of being put on the spot in that way. I think it's kind of fun. I think that was very fun. Um, it's just like I feel like sometimes the redeem is like you push the button and you want the streamer to do it, right? Um, and that is you know not how it would work, right? But I could do a redeem for something like that, or y'all can just ask me. uh, I think it's good practice, right? Um, Question: if you're freestyle writing versus freestyle speaking out the poem, do you think there's more thought behind writing and more stream of consciousness behind speaking it out? When I'm speaking it out, I'm thinking a lot about sound. I am looking for alliteration and I'm looking for rhymes. Because personally, I feel that it gets, spoken out loud, improvised. It can get really out there if it doesn't have like a sonic tool bringing it back, or like a refrain, like the refrain in that poem of spring to or winter to spring, spring to summer, summer to fall, fall to winter, winter to spring, right? Um, Created a structure and created a direction, which is why when, Rutuf said, autumn turned winter, I'm like, oh, I have a structure for the poem. I can just improvise the whole thing now. Um, because then it's trying to get from point A to point B to point C to point D, right? Um, and then to do so in a way that's like roughly competent. Whereas when I'm writing, right, I think it's much more. I'm not always thinking about the big structures. Usually, when I'm writing by hand, I write a line. Like almost all of my poems start. I have an idea for a line. There's not an idea of a structure or anything. I get a line, and then I say, what is the line that has to follow this line? And then what is the line that has to follow those two lines in like a very, there is one path forward, if that makes sense. Which is, it's fairly limiting, and I would like to try to break from that a bit, and, you know, that's something I do think about experimenting on more. But yeah, I mean, no matter what, I mean, like you say, Brian, depends on the person. The medium in which we're creating art, right? The spoken versus the page versus music versus playing music off the page versus improvising, right? Um, it's always going to have a different sound, a different feel, a different, process, a different thought process. Um, and yeah, and with the freestyle poetry, you asked, do you think there's more thought behind writing and more stream of consciousness? Um, when you're live, there is fundamentally less time to think, right? Sometimes you just have to say a word and go anywhere, right? Because if you leave the space for too long, it breaks the flow of things. It breaks the sort of function of it as a piece of art, or as a continuous poem. Um, and when I'm writing by hand, I have all the time in the world. I am incredibly patient when I'm writing by hand, where it's like something I was writing the other day. It's the one with the leaf. The one with the bad drawing on the same page. Um, so like, I wrote a line and then I scribbled out half of it. And then I'm like, okay, I can write this. And then I wrote a bunch. I'm like, nope, we're not doing those. And I wrote another thing. I'm like, nope, not that. And then I wrote these. And then I scribbled out some more stuff. And then I wrote a few things, right? And you don't get to do that when it's live, right? It's fundamentally temporal to freestyle. You go forward. There's no going back. There is no revising the thing you said. And usually if you try to correct the thing you said before, or change it, which you can kind of do, you end up getting stuck on that thought, and then you're not going forward again, right? Yeah. You can't archive freestyle either unless it's recorded or someone else dictates it for you. Yeah. It's truly like a shared moment kind of thing. And of course on stream everything gets saved as a VOD, at least for a couple weeks. And y'all can clip stuff. Any one of you can click clip and then it's clipped, right? So a little different when it's in person, right? Freestyle performance is difficult and impressive. That's why rap battles exist and why there's a winner, because if you freeze, will you lose? Yeah. But some people are freaking masters at it. Yeah, freestyle performers and people who practice that are really impressive. And I think, practicing improvised poetry, practicing freestyle poetry is really good because it practices a spontaneous poetic impulse, right? To be able to string things into continued poetic ideas. I've heard people say before that the way I speak sometimes sounds poetic, and I feel like practicing something like freestyle would exacerbate something like that, where you're practicing being able to string together segments of poetic thought in real time. But I also think in terms of creativity and spontaneity, writing on the page, the quicker the mind is able to have poetry emerge, probably, right, that would help with the writing process. And a very thoughtful, observant writing process would probably help with the freestyle, right? So I think they're all good things to do. Hello, big boy Gabriel. Welcome. We're sort of talking about improvised poetry, and pretty soon we're going to be reading another poem from chat, which we'll probably So yeah, it's between Nikki, and you said you're looking forward to my thoughts on the nihilistic poem. It's between Nikki and Kathzik, and that is the decision to make. Um, and I'm unsure. Kathzik's is longer. That's something to consider. Um, Now I don't revise what I type, but I am hearing it as I type in the moment. I'm not performing it immediately, which for me is freeing and lets me not second guess myself. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, everyone's process is different. EJ is decent at the freestyle thing. I've very rarely been in EJ's streams, so I don't really know his deal. Just as, because he always streams like before me generally, and that definitely means I'm not gonna be watching that because I'm gonna be like gearing up for my stream, right? Maybe. Uh, yeah. Okay. So what am I reading? That's the question. Am I reading Hindsight by Cizik? Am I reading Circular Logic by Nikki? Is the question that's been taunting the two of you who probably both want your poem read. And I'm gonna skim them both. It's possible. It's not impossible is maybe a more precise phrasing. I'm gonna skim them both. Slavoj Zizek. No, not Zizek. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna skim them because I want to know what I'm getting into. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, I see. Gotcha. Okay. And then Circular Logic has parentheses. I like parentheses. Circular Logic is short and it's rather heavy. I am going to start with Circular Logic, and I think I have a good amount of energy today. I might try to read both of them. I wouldn't, consider that an impossibility. I guess I already said that. But we'll see. And Circular Logic has been submitted longer, so there's that. Yeah. Gabriel, you're sad that not Zizek. Yeah, I haven't really read any Zizek. I know that he's a philosopher and that he is a modern and he's kind of crazy. And he's somewhat, I don't know. I think I feel like I've heard that he has kind of weird politics. I'm not sure. Anyway, here's Circular Logic. What is? No, don't do that. Don't do this thing. iPad, stop being. Don't do that. Okay. Sorry. Technical stuff. Circular Logic. Nikki, I mean, you've already said this poem is nihilistic, which is probably background enough. Any questions going into it? Any things you would like me to consider? Any thoughts? Necessary context? It doesn't look to me like there's too much beyond the scope of the text that should be necessary, but I could be wrong. But yeah, if you have anything, we'll see. Nope. Okay. Circular Logic by Nikki. I am matter. That does not matter. My molecules orbit the hollow realization beneath my ribs that value is not found in the curve of open palms. Hearing the rattle as I count pennies into a barren well, I will fill it with salt water. Perhaps that will matter. Circular logic. Right, circular logic. This sort of maybe that will matter, that does not matter. I mean, this is the whole nihilistic thing, right? Maybe that'll matter. It doesn't matter. This matters. This doesn't matter. The mind desires for something to matter. The mind desires meaning, right? Value. What a great word. I love the word value. And then it doesn't. And then it does. We have a well, which you've written about wells and shared poetry about wells before, which is kind of cool. And yeah, wells and salt water. There's a lot of like symbolic, right? Salt water is a symbol, a barren well is a symbol, pennies is a symbol, open palms, right? The space beneath one's ribs. These are all certainly things that can go very far and be interpreted very far beyond the text. But yeah, Bushka, oof, so much to unpack. There is a lot within a little. And that can be tricky sometimes, right? But where to start? I'm going to read it again. I am matter. That does not matter. My molecules orbit the hollow realization beneath my ribs that value is not found in the curve of open palms. Hearing the rattle as I count pennies into a barren well. Okay, that's like wishing, right? I fill it with salt water. Perhaps that will matter. Yeah, so there's very much like this futility thing, right, happening. I think this is a word that comes up, and I think this is just a very nihilistic kind of word that usually the one I associate with this sort of mindset, this question of, does it matter? Is this all futile? What is the point of doing these things? And I think something, right, counting pennies into a barren well, making these wishes, right, a wishing well, throwing a coin in, and yet it being barren, it having nothing to offer, even then to like fill it with something undesirable, with salt water, also tears. It's just very like dejected and depressed. We have, this, like, I love counting pennies, not one penny, not two pennies. It's like a wish, a wish, a wish, a wish, and none of them seem to matter. We can imagine someone with a handful of pennies, just kind of tossing them in, tossing meaningless wishes into the abyss, right? And this is like the whole nihilistic, meaningless mindset. right? Like, um, nothing matters. If we take this as true, right? And then the mind, or like the natural impulse in life, is to try to place value in things, right? To try to find meaning anywhere, right? To try to have something matter. And then, you know, that's very quickly invalidated by nothing mattering, right? We create wishes. They're beautiful for a moment. They fall. Um, Perhaps that will matter. And then I am matter, and that doesn't matter, right? Like, so we have this matter. We have two matters. We have the matter of matter, and we have the matter of meaning. Um, um, I think this is like a really interesting way to start the poem, right? Um, because it's sort of like separate from a lot of the other things going on, right? Like, we have this like perhaps it will matter, right? Perhaps that will matter, that does not matter. These two things are very connected through the idea of like the meaning kind of matter. Um and and that's sort of like this whole section, right, is operating in that way. And then we also have like the I am matter, which interacts much more closely with like the physical existence part of the poem. Um, this like my body kind of thing, right? I am matter. I am a body. That doesn't matter. And then we go back to this sort of, um, you know, meaning type matter. Uh, Gotta color code better. This meaning type matter. And then it sort of like circles back to here, and then this sort of connects to here. So it has this weird like alternating structure, weird in like a good way, where like these two sections are really the ones that connect, and then like it's interesting. I don't know. It's a cool shape for a poem. Is the only way I can describe it. My molecules orbit the hollow. Dream crashed. That's really frustrating. Um, Now it's back. That's annoying. Um, okay. We're back. I think we're back. Yeah, my computer feels very warm. It's warm again. It's summer. Are we back? Is stream no longer crashed? I just keep killing your stream. Yeah, it really is just your poems. Um, okay. I think it's fine. It's back. It's annoying. I thought I had that kind of solved. It was good the last few streams. I do think it's like a computer heat issue, actually, but whatever. Um, Poem. My molecules orbit the hollow realization beneath my ribs that value is not found in the curve of open palms. Uh, and you know, like an open palm, it curved can like hold something, uh, right? You know, this can be the idea of like holding an object or asking for an object or some kind of sort of physical representation. Uh, I think, you know, an open palm can imply like touch. You know, an open palm can cup a cheek. It can, you know, hands holding each other, offering a hand, these kinds of things. Um, uh, I think, I don't know I don't know if anyone has other things that jump to mind when we think of an open palm, what that could represent. I mean, there's an idea of like begging, right? Like wanting to have something fill that hand. It's also like just fundamentally something that is empty, right? Is just another kind of symbolic direction of that. Um, right? We have the hollow realization, we have the empty palms. I love how the curve of the open palms can symbolize many things. It can mean begging, right? For forgiveness. It can mean destiny. Yeah, an open palm, right? Something waiting to be filled, possibility, destiny. I think those are similar. Uh, it can mean, yeah, begging for what, right? For forgiveness, this sort of like prayer like direction, that aspect, begging for something material, which certainly ties back into this materiality of I am matter, that does not matter, right? Matter not mattering. um, right? Value is not found in the filling of a palm. Value is not found in whatever this is, in the possibility ahead. Value is not found in, touch. Value is not found in holding something. Uh, and I think all of these like work incredibly well when we're talking about nihilism, right? I mean, it's sort of inherent, right? Um, like, of course, value is not found in anything because value is not found, right? There is no matter. Um, I like how value connects to the pennies later. That's just a nice thing. Um, and I mean, even value in an open palm could be someone holding a bunch of coins, right? And then taking them and counting them into the well. So this also sort of works as a straight through narrative in that way. Um, but I love maybe just that the symbolism of the poem, of the open palm, invites us to like try to fill it with stuff, right? Like this poem, we read it and we're going to try to make meaning. We're going to try to place something in the palm. We're going to try to throw some pennies at this poem to have it mean something. Um, and the poem like fundamentally rejects that. And no matter what we interpret this poem as, right, it doesn't matter, right? Um, no matter sort of what the pennies are, no matter what the well is, like, I mean, perhaps it will matter, but really it circles. I mean, it sort of tells us to circle back to it doesn't matter, right? Um, and that's a really cool thing, right? When we just take this very like direct philosophical, statement, nothing matters, and then place a poem within that, it those things play off of each other naturally because reading a poem is like looking for all this meaning. I told you it was the most nihilistic thing I've ever written. Yeah, and it's interesting because like it's like one could interpret this as not necessarily entirely nihilistic. um, right? Like it leaves this question at the end. Perhaps that will matter. Um, and this is, there are two ways to interpret this, right? Perhaps that will matter, and this is like the exit. That at some point, we loop around this poem and its different directions of meaning over and over and over and over again, right? And we kind of exist in this cycle, this circle of whatever, as we do sometimes as people. And then sometimes something comes along as an exit, as something that keeps us from being miserably nihilistic and downtrodden and hopeless and whatever. Um, right. Every time, perhaps that will matter. And I mean, uh, you know, this is sort of the trouble with that nihilistic thing, is it's this like hope and then this denial and this hope and this denial. And one probably hopes that at some point the hope will free one from the cycle. But you don't know until it does. You're free from this poem once you stop reading this poem. If someone chooses to only read it once, it is less nihilistic. I do think that's true. The Sleepy Librarian, right? If you read the poem once and you end at perhaps that will matter, you take the exit, right? And you're like, okay, there's hope at the end. And we can leave this experience and leave with some hope. But every time you go back to it, right, it reinforces the sort of, you know, question. It reinforces that this might not matter, because we come back to the top and I am matter and that doesn't matter, right? And then it might matter, but then we go back, right? So that's cool, right? Right, sometimes there's an immense amount of value in making a poem that captures something, right? Where it captures an experience, right? In this way, the experience is that nihilistic mindset, where if you just jump off the boat, where if you just take the exit, right, you have hope again, you have meaning again, you're happy, right? But if you keep reading the poem, if you stay within this sort of nihilistic cycle going around and around and around and around, right? It gets more nihilistic. And then the only way to escape it is just to eventually, suck it up and hope, or to somehow like reconcile with the hopelessness. And that's always you have to like kill it, you have to stab it or something. I mean, I've heard it described in many different ways. I have a friend who described it as running up to that demon with a sword and cutting it in half. There's this sort of detached, allowing there to be no meaning, and then just so it's not a problem anymore. There are ways to get off the train, right? You jump off the circle. Yeah. The cycle is a cycle is a cycle is a cycle is a cycle, pretty much. I don't want to jump off the circle. It's safe in here. Right. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely an experience that happens, right? We grow attached to the misery sometimes. Taking the hopeful exit. Yeah. You choose the good ending, or you choose to keep playing. That parenthetical can be read as I am matter that has no meaning in and of itself, or the fact that I am matter doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Oh, yeah, I do see that, right? I am matter and that has no meaning in and of itself, or the fact that I am matter and that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I wonder how different those two things are. You could almost I almost think of a third reading of this parenthetical that is I am matter, parentheses, where this is truly like meta, right? Like a meta commentary on the poem itself within the poem, that says actually, this doesn't matter to the poem at all. Um, because I mean, like, this cycle has a way of becoming very self-referential. Um, and and I mean, maybe that's an interesting thing, right? There's a line, actually discard this line, it doesn't matter, that's useless. And this is like maybe another one of these like processes of the nihilistic mind, right? Oh, I am matter. I am a being. I am alive. This is a hopeful thought. Ah, no, that line doesn't matter, right? Um, toss that one aside. Let's start the poem, right? Um, because it does, like, these are two little like add-on notes in the same way that this is a little like commentary, perhaps, that will matter. And one could argue that like these middle three stanzas are truly the poem, and like the rest is meta commentary on the whole thing. But I mean, you know, overanalyzing, right? um, what is your personal difference between matter and meaning? I think that's a question I can answer, and I think it's also a question that would be interesting for Nikki to answer. Um, yeah, matter and meaning, right? Does something matter? Does something have meaning? Um, Semantic games. There's a massive difference, right? Um, but it's like a game of definitions, which aren't always the most useful games to play, but sometimes they're fun. Meaning, right? Uh, See, I can go like start defining meaning with other words. It's so I mean they feel different, right? Um Meaning. So I'm going to clarify on that question, right? The difference between meaning and matter. I'm going to I'm going to I'm going to maybe describe my personal difference between something mattering, right? It matters, uh, versus um, it has meaning, or it is meaningful. Because I'm not going to go for the whole matter, the other kind of matter direction. Um, I mean, I don't know. Semantic. It's very semantic. Meaning is like, right? I can say like meaning is like purpose, and you can ask like, well, what is purpose? Meaning is, to me, meaning is more of like a. It's such a well, it's not too deep. I just think it's like a razor thin distinction, um for, and I'll be funny and say like maybe it's a distinction that doesn't matter. um uh but maybe it does, right? Because my mind jumps to thinking that they are different, and thinking about why they're different is important. This is taking us away from the poem, and that's fine. It's useful to step away and then to come back. Um, Meaning and matter. Okay. Meaningful, right? And like it matters. Like I just want to put these within like the same grammatical space, right? Something is meaningful or something matters. Um cuz well, Meaning can stand on its own. Um, right? We can talk about like life having meaning. Um, versus like my life matters. I love this question. I haven't said anything of meaning, nor anything that matters about it. Because I mean, like, I think it's useful to answer these questions though. Like, I want to talk about this idea of like why one would even do this. Like, why would one think about the purpose of describing something as having meaning or something as mattering, right? Because, especially within poetry, right? Because poetry, every single action we take is a choice between words, right? We have like a sea of infinite words essentially because we can make up new words and we can do gibberish. I mean, we can think of like the poem like the Jabberwock. So we take an infinite number of words in this great blob of language, and then maybe we have a feeling and we associate some set of words. Those are commas. Set notation brackets. Um, with this emotion, right? So these are the words that I associate with like love or whatever, right? And then like from them, I have to make a decision between like one word or another, and I have to put it on the page. And words with very similar meanings as a synonym of definitions, not to be confused with meanings in this context. Um, right, it's so slippery, this whole affair. uh, these words have roughly the same definition. They have roughly the same meaning, like from a practical perspective of communication, right? I can say this means so much to me. I can say this really matters to me, right? And those are like probably definitionally by the dictionary like functionally the same. But, I really think a lot of words have a distinction of feeling, right? Where I mean, I think of something from Mary Oliver's Poetry Handbook, which is a great book teaching poetry, where she talks about the difference between a stone and a rock, um, and that these things are the same, right? A stone is a rock, um, but these words like feel different. A rock, I mean, maybe some of it is sound, right? A stone has softer sounds than a rock. It ends rock. A stone is settled. A rock is, uh, a stone is settled and enduring, and a rock is hard and sharp, right? A stone is round. Oh, ah. Rock sounds heavier. Maybe. Does a rock sound heavier? I think a stone sounds heavier. Um, right, but we make these distinctions between words. So it's useful to have these conversations because we are talking about choosing words, right? And even here we use value, right? Which we could say, my molecules orbit the hollow realization beneath my ribs that meaning is not found in the curve of open palms, but here we say value, right? Like, why are we choosing one word over another? And that's because these words are fundamentally distinct. You never use stone to describe a pebble. You would use rock. I think you could say well, you might have to say a small stone. But you could say like this stone. I mean, we think of like a gemstone, right? This stone, and you're holding up something very small. So I don't think that's necessarily the case. um, but words feel different. And I think to me, meaning, something has meaning and something matters, do feel different. Meaning feels a little more, uh, well, let me look at matter, right? Matter has this double meaning. I love how many different contexts I've used the word meaning in the last 10 minutes. Matter has a double meaning, and it's one that we investigate in the poem itself, where matter is connected to the matter as in, you know, objects, the stuff that makes stuff up, right? And meaning feels very much like something that is purely mental, purely like emotional, right? Meaning comes from looking at the words and having emotions. Meaning comes from like spiritual truth, and meaning comes from all of this stuff. Matter, you know, to me has a feeling of practicality. It has a feeling of, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, where meaning is maybe slightly more abstract and matter is slightly more concrete. Um, you could say it matters whether you well, let's look at a definition. It really matters whether your pencil is sharp or dull, right? So that means like there's like a practical difference between your pencil being sharp and your pencil being dull. And you could say there's a lot of meaning behind your pencil being sharp or your pencil being dull. And that might speak to an entirely different level, right? Where I think, oh, there is a lot of meaning whether your pencil is sharp or dull. If your pencil is sharp, you're someone who keeps things in like this sort of more perfect state. You care more about precision. It matters whether your pencil is sharp or dull. Gets me thinking about, oh, we're trying to draw fine lines and maybe a dull one isn't good for that. Or we're trying to do light, soft shading and we'd rather have a dull pencil. So, within contexts, within any sort of context, these words have like vastly different directions we can take them in terms of meaning, right? um, and I think in a vacuum, when we're talking about like dictionary definitions, you ask me, the original question, what is your personal difference between matter and meaning? And I like floundered at that question for like 5 minutes because thinking about them in the abstract is very hard. It's very slippery. It's very like, well, they're similar in this way, but different in this way. You're like, but when you like apply them to a reference, an actual example, the pencil example, I think you can help like clear a lot of things up. So, but I think that comes back to this, to poetry, right? We have a context. We always have a context of what we're trying to say, of what we're trying to evoke, of the other things we've already put on the page. And this is why, like, in this poem, value is a much more valuable word than meaning, because value points toward the meaning later, I'm doing this intentionally, of pennies, right? And pennies and value, right, have this same this shared idea of the material of wealth, and where if we use meaning there, right, realization beneath my is that meaning is not found in the curve of the open palms. We, by using meaning, we lose the meaning of these pennies literally sitting in the palm, right? Or we probably still have it, but it's less like on the page, where value kind of points to that meaning. So obviously the difference between them matters, but at the same time, right, I can use a lot of these words interchangeably in the sentences as I've been doing, uh, you know, as I've been saying this. So, um, but I think when we're writing a poem, I mean, or editing a poem, and we look at a word like value, right? Something useful to do is to say, okay, I use the word value here. What are the other words I could have used here that mean the same thing? What are the other words I can use here that mean slightly different things? And how would it matter for me to use one word versus the other? Which of those would increase the value of the poem? Um, right, that's a thought process we can go through when editing our own work. Um, that can probably lead to a lot of, um, like, that's a really good line of inquiry. Um, right, where we, you know, look at our set of possible words, which most of this in the process of writing happens very intuitively, happens very automatically. And sometimes, right, we don't give ourselves time to like really make a decision, this word or that word. Um, so I think in the process of editing, right, uh, that's a good thing to do. I'm really glad you asked that question. Um, uh, yeah. Um, I was 100% trying to be clever with the double meaning of matter. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Um, like this poem would be way worse if you said like, I am stuff. I don't know what our other synonyms for matter are. Um, right. But like, there's so much, word choice is so important. Sometimes I hear like, I often hear the comment, like, I really like your word choice. Like, people just give that to people a lot. I wonder if that's just, like, a vague enough comment, kind of like, it's good, where it, like, doesn't mean anything. Um, but, I mean, this poem is an example of why word choice is so important. And the word choice here is really effective, right? Using value, using hollow, right, which sort of like connects to this idea of the barren well, using molecules, which like reinforces this matter kind of scientific feeling orbit, right? We have this like cosmicness, which then probably speaks to this idea of meaning, right? When we like go into this space of the cosmic, the big, the sublime, the I am small amidst the cosmos, I have no meaning, right? It very subtly implies all of that, without saying any of it. Like, this poem doesn't need the nihilistic, I'm looking into the stars and I feel so small, because it says matter, molecules, and orbit. And that places that in our mind, right? Um, and then, like, and then we have like this ribs and palms, which takes us back to the body, which takes us back to the I am matter. I am a person. I am a human. And so I am matter now means like what? I am cosmic meaningless space dust. It also means I am a body. I am something of inherent feeling value. I am something that wants to live, right? That is biologically optimized to survive. Right? Like, I mean, even not found goes back to this like scientific computery kind of feel, right? Like a page not found. Um, uh, in the curve of open palms, curve orbit, we're doing circles, we're doing the circular logic kind of thing. Um, hearing the rattle as I count pennies into a barren well, right? Pennies, quarters, nickels, dimes, these all have different meanings. Um, right? But like, I don't know, word choice, so important. Um, and I think particularly in this stanza, I mean, I just rattled off, rattled off so many uh, little things that this does. Right? It's like it's so valuable. I keep like using the words in the poem to describe the poem. Um, Valuable, meaningful, it matters. They're like stuck in my head now. I'm so bad with editing. I choose to rarely do it because I get stuck in a circle of meanings, probably. Um, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. You know, you don't have to edit. You can just take the blissful, hopeful uh, escape from the endless cycle and ignore the existential underlying uh, choice of choice that is required as a poet. um, yeah, editing's hard. Editing is like humbling. Editing is difficult. Editing is not this like spontaneous, intuitive thing that writing often is. And I struggle to edit too. I edit very rarely. I've been working on it more lately, especially when I go to submit to like a literary journal. It can be helpful for me because if I'm choosing to submit, then I say, okay, I'm going to take time to like edit this poem before, and then it's like now I have a reason to edit. Like giving yourself a reason can be helpful as opposed to just um, be like, I'm going to sit down and edit for editing's sake. It can, you know, sometimes feel a little unintuitive because then you just feel like you're going in circles, right? Um, One small observation, I like how the poem starts off with the air of a scientist, matter does not matter molecule, yeah, and ends with the air of a lost creative soul. Yeah, it does really come down, right, to the material. It comes down to this like counting pennies, wishing, barren well, this like scene. I will find it with salt. I will fill it with salt water. Right. And this is so vague, right? This is so like up to interpretation. Um that like you know, um it really does feel like much more unmoored emotionally than all of this. Um and maybe that makes sense, right? It's the movement toward meaning. It's the movement towards something that matters. It's the movement toward art and, you know, this sort of human emotional kind of thing. And then, like, what kills it, right? The analytic. I am matter, right? Like, I am body versus I am matter, right? Are two very different things. It's like, okay, I am matter. It doesn't matter molecules. And then we get emotional, we get feeling, we get life, we get the self-evident truths of meaning and belief and whatever. Um, and then when we circle back, it is in the circling back of analysis, um, and thought and like rationality. And then, you know, yeah, it's a description of like I think the fundamental cycle that the human mind goes through, which is excellent. And then, you know, this poem suggests that leaving the cycle maybe is a hopeful thing. There's also something like very inherently beautiful about the cycle itself. Um, yeah, I keep running all the way up on these ad breaks. There's an ad starting like now-ish. So we'll come back to this poem in a few minutes. Stand up, drink water, get a snack, go to the bathroom, stretch, move your body. It's healthy for you, keeps you alive. Um, yeah, uh, I'll be back soon. Hi, I'm back. It's 100% better than anything I've ever written. Ha ha. If it's 100% better, if it's better by a magnitude of 100%, the Sleepy Librarian, that means you're already halfway there. But, oh no, you said 100 times. Oh, not 100%. Oh well. My twisting of your words doesn't work. My double meaning doesn't work. Um, I lack basic literacy. Um, Welcome back. We're reading Circular Logic. Everyone has greatness in them. Then I gotta start digging, I think. Yeah, if you dig the well, then the water will start to come up, right? You just gotta dig. Um, but I mean, I doubt that comparison is entirely useful. The Sleepy Librarian. Um, I'm not sure that matters. um, Jeez, matter. Um, because and I mean, even to engage with it on that level assumes that it's true, and I'm not sure it is. I mean, how could you quantify what is twice as good or what is 100 times as good? I mean, I'm inclined to, yeah, we're back. We're so back. I'm inclined to. I'll put my face on. I'm inclined to deny, your claim that it's 100 times better than uh, anything that you have written. Um, but I don't think I want to fight it on a semantic level of 100 times or what it means to be better, or you know on the level of anything you've written, or any of these semantic terms, uh, because you know um, I think I'd rather fight it on that. That's not a useful thought to have. I mean, maybe it is a useful thought, right? To acknowledge something as better acknowledges like a direction that you might go, and that's good. To say like, oh, this is really good. I couldn't write something like that. Is a useful thought. I will actually say. I think that's good. Um, I wonder though about the value of describing one's quality in a way that like fundamentally places it against something else. Right, to say like, right, that's a compliment in a sense, right? It's a compliment to Nikki saying like this is really good. Um, and that's good, right? It's good to compliment people, but the compliment is laced with like this is better than my thing, which I feel like to me, right, sort of like knocks the compliment down a peg. I'm being very like critical of this message, and I'm sorry. I don't mean to be super uh, nitpicky about it, but like is there more value? Is it more meaningful, right? To just say that it's good, right? Um, right. If the intention is to compliment, uh, I think that's something worth thinking about, right? Um, like I've been thinking about this a lot in my own life. Like when I'm trying to thank someone for something, when I appreciate something, when someone has done something for me, like I'm not very socially functional. I'm 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 much more socially functional on stream because I don't actually have a person in front of me. Like y'all exist within like that green dot, right? You're not people. I mean, you're people, right? But you're not there. You're not looking at me. And when someone like compliments me in life, Like for a long time I had this impulse to just like look away and just be like, hemming and hawing, thanks, right? I would say thanks like it was a question. Um, oh, that's funny, Elias. No, that wasn't intentional, but I guess it was a Gatsby reference. Yeah. Uh, I might have to use that more. Um, um, is that a Gatsby reference? It's like it's a JoJo reference. Uh, um, yeah, but I think like isn't it better, right, for that version of me to look the person in the eye and say like, thank you, right? Like, thank you for that compliment, right? And it's still not something I am very good at, right? To like earnestly look someone in the eye and say like, I appreciate this thing you did for me. That's like so incredibly uncomfortable, right? And this was inspired by seeing someone do this, like seeing an interaction between two people where one person was so genuinely grateful to the other and like stared them dead in the eye and said thank you like they meant it. And I realized in that moment that I had never done that before, right? Um, and I wonder, right, on that same level, what it looks like to say, I like this poem, right, in these ways with my whole chest. Because I don't think I'm very good at doing that either. And I think that's why I do all this. Um, because this is all a very oblique way of saying, like, here are the things I like about the poem. Um, and right, without necessarily saying it straight. And I wonder if that's a problem. uh, yeah. Yours just tuned in like hearing a bell. Yeah. Um, I think saying something is good gives it less meaning than giving a person. Well, yeah, like good. Like good is not saying it's good. I hate it's good. You weren't here earlier in the stream. I was talking about a poetry workshop that I'm teaching soon, which the whole premise is that saying it's good is not good feedback. Um, but I meant saying good in a way that is personal. Giving a personal meaning / connection to the comment. And personally, I don't feel bad about humbling myself and acknowledging that I'm worse in certain kind of skills, knowing I am most likely better at different things. Yeah. Okay. Um, I can super get behind that. Oh, my computer's lagging. Oh my gosh. Um, I don't know if the stream is still stable, but like I'm watching myself like teleport back and forth as I rock back and forth like this. Um, man, it's summer. So, yeah, basically what happens is like summer comes and it gets to be like uh I don't know. It's so hot. It's it's 90 degrees right now on March 16th, 18th, on March 18th. Um in Las Vegas, Nevada. And like literally it just gets so hot in my room. Like it's probably 80 degrees in my bedroom right now. Um and the computer, like, it's a laptop, it doesn't have good cooling. So it just doesn't cool itself down. And then it gets like to overheat and then like it super intense on the CPU. Um and I think sometimes that's why it crashes too. Um Video is shuddering a little bit, the audio is fine. Yeah. Um Also, welcome in. Broken pH meter is uh, a great username. But yeah, Sleepy Librarian. I love, um, yeah, not feeling bad about humbling oneself, right? Being worse at certain things, knowing that like everyone has skills they're better and worse at. Yeah, and I think that's all really good. So, um, yeah, I do think there are some people, right? Or at times people say that in a way that is less like genuine than that, right? And it's hard to tell on the internet, right? It's hard to know. Um, yeah, sometimes it's kind of hard being straightforward with telling people you like them and what they're doing. Yeah, it's terrifying. Um, what you said, um, somehow a moment ago, what you said somehow a moment ago somehow reminded me of a poem by Rachel Lewis. I think it's called "Tell People You Love Them That You Love Them." I mean, that sounds like a great title. I love that repetition. I want to look it up. We're sort of on we're sort of on like the meandering part where my attention span is falling. Um, tell people, tell the people you love that you love them, by Rachel Lewis on All Poetry, on Hello Poetry. Is this the poem or is this is like someone writing about the poem? Right? I don't think that's the actual poem. I think that's someone's commentary. That's the poem, or is that because this is by someone else? Oh wait, I don't know. Now the thing's loading. It is the poem. Okay, it's a prose poem. It's kind of long. I'll read it on a my own time because it's kind of long, and we are in fact supposedly talking about Nikki's poem right now. Um, so we'll get back to that. Um, I'll not let myself get too derailed. Uh, yeah. On what platform? That website was called like Hello Poetry or something. I just looked up the title. Um, it's one of my most favorite poems actually. Okay, dope. Um, that's cool. Perhaps we'll check it out. How do I give you a poem? I'm a frying pan. Um, you give me a poem by joining the Discord server. You can join the Discord server by clicking on this link. And then when you go into the Discord server, you can go into stream submissions, and then you can make a new post, and you can say, you can put your poem there. You can paste it in, or you can do a file. Either is fine. All good. We was just a reference I had in mind. Feel free to tell you what you think once you had a chance to read it someday. Yeah, I'll probably forget about it. Um, oh, Discord link popped up again. We took the exit, and now we are back in the circle. We always have to come back to the circle um, because it's the existentialist circle. I'm not sure, Nikki, really, if this is nihilistic, right? Um, right? Like, I think nihilism, right, is a conclusion, right? Not you can always call me frying, yeah, um, frying pan. Nihilism is a conclusion, right? That there is no meaning whatsoever. And then, like, it's the question of where we go from there. At least that's my interpretation of nihilism, philosophically, right? Um, this poem, right, I think more so is existentialist, which is similar philosophy. Nihilism is sort of within existentialist philosophy, along with like absurdism and whatever else. I don't know. An existentialist thought is really focused on asking the question of meaning? Meaning? Question mark? Right? meaning. Is meaning, where meaning, how meaning, why meaning, right? Um, and this poem, right, like it has this that doesn't matter, but then it has like the maybe that will matter, that might matter, some things matter, right? Um, wishes like we're it's more about like the interrogation of meaning itself than like the conclusion of the lack of meaning. And it involves like some of this cycle that is somewhat nihilistic of like the feeling that there's no meaning, but then it's like the feeling that there might be meaning, right? Um, and I think the fact that this poem, right, well, the most nihilistic. Yeah, I'm saying that maybe the most nihilistic thing you've ever written isn't nihilistic, and that's a good thing. um, I think it's bad to be. I mean, it's bad to be like pessimistically nihilistic. Optimistic nihilism's okay. Um, Matter Matters chats that. Oh yeah, you're catching on quickly. We've been doing this the whole time, frying pan of like talking about matter and meaning and this means this and this matters and matter. And we're just like going in circles today. um, uh, but yeah, like fundamentally, this poem acknowledges the out, and I think if the poem didn't, right, it would. Like if the poem was purely the cycle, I think it would be more nihilistic. It's been an hour. Yeah, a lot of y'all are new here, right? This is what I do on stream. I talk about a poem and we dwell on it for a long time. Uh, this is what you sign up for when you send me your poems. Is to you know uh have them put under the microscope for a very long amount of time. You used a lot of circles in your imagery. Yeah, circles and curves. You even have like you even have the parentheses which have the curve. But yeah, like orbits, circles, right? You have the curve, the palms are sort of circular. You have the pennies, you have the well. Oh yeah, the opening of the well is a circle, right? Um, Molecules are sort of because you have strings of atoms which are sort of individually uh, represented as circular things, right? Atom is kind of a circle. A molecule is like a bunch of these things put together, so it's like almost circular. Um, but that's like a thing. You're redeeming to stretch. I can stretch within my chair. Yeah, I can reach the sky and unslouch. Uh yeah. Lots of circles, lots of circularity, lots of matter. That's cool. I'll submit one next time. I'm a bit nervous though. Oh, for sure. It's a terrifying and definitely like admirable uh thing to submit and to place oneself under that degree of scrutiny. Um and definitely like it is totally cool to hang around and watch me, you know, rant about people's poetry and not have it be yours. Um that's totally cool. And if, y'all are into hanging out and giving your own thoughts and your own interpretations, then that's super cool too. It's always welcome to have y'all in chat, providing your thoughts on the work too. Poetry is part of one's soul. Yeah, it's hard to like put that fragment of your soul onto the internet in front of people for like me, a stranger, to like, you know, look at and like broadcast. That's terrifying. Like I don't know if I would submit poetry to my own stream, you know. um, so it's fair. Um, yeah. um, yeah. I use my poetry to vent, so my poems can be depressing. I think many people do that for sure. I want to read this again. I feel like it's been at least half an hour since I read the whole thing through. Um, I am matter. That does not matter. My molecules orbit the hollow realization beneath my ribs that value is not found in the curve of open palms. Hearing the rattle as I count pennies into a barren well, I will fill it with salt water. Perhaps that will matter. I love the sound in this poem. I mean, I've commented on it slightly, like a little bit. Um, but rattle, I was going to say something about this word earlier, but rattle sounding like matter is just really nice. But then we have this, like, you talked about things being round in this poem, Nikki, and even just like the use of the letter O so commonly throughout this poem. Does not, molecules, orbit, hollow, realization, um, not found, open, count, into, um, right? It has this roundness, this circularity, um, that is really awesome. And then interestingly, right, the lines I matter or I am matter, which has this I matter feel to it. But this, like, I am this being, I am, body, I am present, I exist. And then this, like, I will fill it with salt water, this thing that might matter. None of these are using that O sound, right? All of these lines, these arguably the least hopeless lines in the poem, right, are the ones that don't have this O, this circular going round feel. They feel like they go through the line and they end, they conclude. And even like I fill it with salt water, right? I think we can think of like cry me. No, that's cry me a river. But like crying, having so much emotion, um, as to fill up a well, right? Crying, and this experience sort of has this inherent meaning, right? Um, and it is in that feeling, it is in that body that we have this sort of respite of this immediate experience that does for a time matter. And then it's upon the return, it's upon the reflection that we get this like circular misery. And then it's okay when we experience, and life is miserable when we think about it. And then we live life and it's okay. I think that's really cool, right? And the the language, the text pointing to that itself, is really dope, right? Personally, I have pretty heavy trauma connected to sharing artistic endeavors in the past. Yeah, it can be hard, especially when you share something and it's like not received or it's insulted or made fun of. I think a lot of people have had that experience, and that's a very troubling thing to happen. Or to be heavily judged for one's art. I mean, there's many ways that trauma creeps into that. I'm so sorry, but my dyslexic self read autistic beavers instead of artistic endeavors. That's quite funny. I like her poem. It feels like it can be read many ways. Yeah, this poem is definitely a very interpretive one, and one that lends us to sort of inserting our own meaning, right? Making meaning of the poem. And this is, I think, true of many of Nikki's poems. As I've now read, I feel like I've read like, what, 5 or 6 of your works, um, that they do invite the reader to make meaning. Um, but I think particularly in this poem, the vagueness where, the reader must make meaning of the poem is just a very like clever thing, as it relates to the fact that this poem is about, you know, things being devoid of meaning, right? Like one way to analyze this poem, arguably, is to say, oh, it's meaningless. It doesn't matter. I'm not reading this shit, you know? um, like, I think if one is truly a nihilist, maybe a pessimistic nihilist, um, you'd better not be reading art. You better not be consuming any art, because otherwise you're making meaning of symbols. um, and but I don't think it's a very serious way to be looking at a poem either way. Giving some lows to the mods. Enjoy the mod pats. I feel like I'm basically we have a couple mods, but most of them are pretty infrequently show up. um Dyslexia. Do you have any poem tips? Um my school has a writing competition. I'm thinking of entering this year, but I suck at poems. Yeah, I can give some poem tips after we're sort of done talking about this poem in particular. Um, obviously, it's easiest to give a tip based on, like tips is very broad, right? There are many ways to give tips, but we can come back to that question if you remind me. Um, I'm not educated in literature, so for me, it feels like that does not matter could be a statement on the type of matter the author sees herself as, or the author is saying that that statement does not matter. Yeah, this uh, parenthetical thing between parentheses, parenthesis etical, um, definitely seems to imply a lot of different meanings. And you don't need to be educated in literature to have, opinions on the meaning and on the piece. Um, because that's dumb to that like the educated are the only ones whose thoughts are worth, having, everyone can read poetry. Um, on the type of matter the author sees herself as. That's interesting, right? I am matter, that does not matter. Um, yeah, yeah. That's not something I jump to, and that's why it's really cool, right? That we get different interpretations. Um, yeah, you can also like see it as, maybe this is what you're saying, because this isn't a meaning that my mind like jumps to and picks up on as like a distinction. Um, but uh, like that does not matter. I am matter that doesn't matter. Like there's also an interpretation of matter here as a sort of verb, um, where we say like, yeah, does not matter is worthless, right? Um, and I think that's like the one I jump to, um, right? But then you have like, the type of matter she sees herself as is the interpretation that doesn't jump out to me, right? Unless you're saying matter that doesn't matter as opposed to the statement itself not mattering. Okay, yes. Yes. I agree with both of those. Both of those are things that are happening. Um So a matter that does not matter is a dysfunctioning matter. Yeah, I think that's another interpretation of it too. So we have I am matter that does not matter. The statement does not matter. I am matter that does not matter. I am matter that, doesn't have worth, that doesn't have value, like you say. And then I am matter that does not matter in this sort of like modern colloquial way of using using a noun as a verb, um, is maybe a third meaning there too. Yeah, and I think all of them are valid, and all of them interact with the poem in different ways, which is super cool. Yeah, I am matter that does not matter. I am worthless. Yes. Oh, I am matter that does not matter. Ah, So that's like a fourth. Yeah, okay, I see. Almost to plow through and ignore the parentheses. I am matter that does not matter. I am matter that does not matter. Um, yeah, I mean there's so many ways to read this, right? Um, I believe she's saying that she is matter, yet that doesn't matter, as she doesn't understand herself. And that bubbles up the emotion into the well, and the wells can burst. Yeah, so I am matter that doesn't matter. I am matter that does not matter. I am matter that does not matter. I mean, I'm saying it like the same thing over and over again, but there are like at least 5 distinct interpretations of those 2 lines here, all of which are valid. Um, and yeah, like, I think that's really cool, right? This is the cool thing about poetry, and this is why we analyze. This is why we break down text, because everyone has their own subjective interpretation. Every interpretation matters, and that's the thing. Like, we all experience the poem in a fundamentally different way, and that's like art, right? Yeah, a dysfunctional human. Why does the word matter look weird? Yet again, that can work with any word. Yeah, we've definitely, like, matter has stopped sounding like a word like half an hour ago for me. Like, in my mind, the voice in the parentheses is almost a statement made under the breath. I am matter. That does not matter. My molecule. Yeah. And I think, right, not only do we have like the meaningful interpretation of this, I think there are a million different ways that we might read the line itself. I am matter. That does not matter. 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 I am matter that does not matter, right? I think all of those very much change the meaning of the poem. And, maybe in the way that the poem frames itself as cyclical, we could go back through this poem, read it, down the page, start again, down the page, start again, and actually read it with a different inflection every single time, and we would probably almost be reading 6 different poems within the same poem just by doing that differently. um, and that's a cool thing about poetry as it pertains to performance, right? That literally the way we say something and the way we read something, which each one of us is going to read this poem differently, right? Some of you might audiate in your head a way that inflection happens. Some of you might just sort of, like, I don't hear sounds in my head, so I don't get to do that. Reading it out loud changes it. The way you read it out loud changes it, right? So that's a really important thing to consider as a poet. And maybe that's a tip for you. Frying pan, right? You asked tips for poetry. I mean, this stream is sort of ripe with them if you pay attention. Um, that's a tip, right? Think about the way that the inflection of the words can change meaning. Think of the way that you emphasize words within the text. Uh, you know, something we could do, right? We could rewrite this poem in different ways. Also, welcome in, Ray. Um, if I wrote this poem and I italicized matter, right? This would signal to my reader something very specific. To emphasize that in some way. That does not matter, right? If I wrote this poem and instead italicized that, I am matter, that does not matter. Or I am matter, that does not matter, right? I could italicize not. I am matter, that does not matter, right? And each of these are very subtly different. And we can choose to do that as a poet, right? There are poets who will like heavily italicize and bold words, who will place them on their own lines to give emphasis in different ways and sort of force the reader toward an interpretation. The other option, like you say, Nikki, ambiguity, when Nikki writes the poem like this, it means that every one of us sort of places our own, inflection, our own pronunciation, our own version onto this poem. And that's a choice that every poet gets to make, consciously or subconsciously, whether to specify, whether to be vague, whether to lead the reader in a very specific direction, or to, move them in another. Right? I mean, I could do this all day. I am matter. I am matter. I am matter. I am matter. Right? Like, we can, that's 3 words. That was at least 4 ways to read it there. And, the permutations become truly infinite when we expand it out onto the level of the poem. So fundamentally, right, when you write with ambiguity, you cede some of that control. Yeah, it's like that one thing where emphasizing a word changes the meaning. That does not matter. That does not matter. That does not matter. And that does not matter. Exactly. Yeah. OMG, I love how you convey meaning with inflection. Yes. And I mean, y'all can do that too, right? It's just a matter of paying attention and then making a choice, right? When I go back to read this poem at the end, because I'll read the poem at the end when we wrap it up, I will make a choice of how to read the poem in that moment. And that is like an expression of my own interpretation as opposed to yours, as opposed to Nikki's, as opposed to whatever. That's why I like hearing your interpretation without telling you mine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My molecules orbit the hollow realization beneath my ribs. My molecules orbit the hollow realization beneath my ribs. Blah, 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 right? I have minimal social understanding. Using inflection maybe outside my skill set. Maybe. I mean, all things take practice, right? And I mean, admittedly, I have minimal social understanding too. If y'all were sitting in front of me right now, I would be a whole mess, and I would not be talking as competently as I am in the setting of mic and camera. But you can practice, right? And I mean, you can even play, maybe is a better thing. Sit with a poem of yours or sit with a poem of someone else's and try to say them different ways and really listen and be attentive as you say those things,
what did that emphasis do? What did this other emphasis change? Does this feel different, right? When I inflect, when I emphasize in different ways. Um, and really, as long as you have some feeling, um, like the social element of how other people um, might receive your inflection, I mean, that doesn't matter nearly as much, right? Um, because uh, they're going to interpret it their own way anyway. But you giving inflection and you having some specific way of speaking is going to show the listener that you care, right? It's going to show them that you do have intention and you do have a specific idea of of how you how you feel about this poem, and that's good, right? Just imagine us naked. I don't know why people give that advice. Yeah, I mean, I would be really more concerned. I mean, specifically on like the online setting, if a bunch of people were watching me on the internet and I was just talking about poetry and like people were getting naked about that, that'd be real concerning, right? Um, that would be worse than maybe the naked in the live setting. Um, uh, just look above the crowd. It looks like you're looking at them when you're not. Yeah, I feel like I definitely stare into the middle distance when I'm on stage, and I'm not looking at anything. Um, but like here on stream, I don't feel like I'm being watched. Is the funny thing, like because there are no eyes on me, which is very strange. I think streaming is really good for introverted people because you get to pretend at sort of the social thing, but you don't have the weight of like eyes interrogating your soul. I mean, the eyes are out there, but they're looking at their screens. You all. Um, I've said a lot about this poem. We've talked about this poem for quite a long time now. Uh, I'm not sure I have much left that I specifically have to say about this. Um, so if anyone has like things you notice, things you think are cool, things that you have questions about, things you're like, why we use this word, why this shape, why this structure, why this whatever, um, now would be the time to throw in any questions pertaining to this poem, right? Um, and then uh and then if not, if no other thoughts, if no other um questions, comments, observations, then uh you know we'll move on. Am I the only one now reading every sentence like 5 times with different inflection? Uh I'm glad you are. Even if you're the only one, I am so glad you are doing. You're playing with the words. Filling it with salt water. I don't know if y'all said this, but salt water is the same taste as tears. Yes. And like the same materials, salt and water, making me think she's drowning herself in tears, aka drowning in that well. Yeah. Um, I would also like to point out that salting a well makes it unusable. Yes. So these are two things with the salt water, right? Um, so as I count pennies into a barren well, I will fill it with salt water. Um, and this is also as I count pennies. So as I make wishes, right, into this well, I salt it. I make it unusable is one thing, but also I fill it with tears, right? And we do like I didn't like I mentioned this like a while ago when we were talking about this, but yeah, drowning in her tears and drowning in that well is like a fascinating interpretation that, you know, comes off of that one, right? Uh, we are tossing things into the well. We are filling this well. Um, and yeah, it does become much more tragic, right? If we have this idea of drowning oneself in it. Um, but either way, right? Fundamentally, the action here is to cry. It's to have like emotion. It's to probably in some way suffer. Um, and yeah, as we do make it, we leave behind something that is not drinkable, right? It's full now, but I still can't drink it. You say, Nikki. Um, and I mean, I think this speaks to maybe the circularity of the poem in a way. This is like another, maybe to interpret it through that lens makes this quite a hopeless ending, right? Perhaps that will matter that I destroyed something. Right, essentially, to salt the well is destruction. It is to make it unusable. It is to make it undrinkable. It is to fill something with my emotion until it breaks, you know, until it fails um, in some way. And I think this is a very probably nihilistic outlook, a negatively, pessimistically nihilistic outlook, right? If nothing has meaning, um, then let me go try to like destroy things and cause pain and cause suffering so that, maybe that will matter. Maybe rather than, wishing and having a body and like searching within myself, um, I can just like tear shit to the ground to like make my mark. I think this is like fundamentally like the ethos of uh, to keep it vague enough, like those who commit mass acts of violence in some cases, not always. Sometimes they're like ideologically motivated. Um, but I guess, we'd think of like, I don't know, in America, my mind jumps to like the school shooter, um, where, you know, nothing matters. So I'm going to destroy some stuff so that I do matter, so that I do make a mark. Um, that sort of ethos, right? Um, and that's the thing. Well, to be fair, the well was already barren. That's true. So we're not necessarily taking this outward act of destruction that's making other people's life worse, um, which means it's just unusable in a different way. Um, and there's probably a lot of interpretive nuance that one could kind of choose what that means. Also, I believe the wishes are actually bullies. If you're getting bullied, your emotions go up, and the pennies build, which reminds me of this quote: if you drop a rock in the ocean, it's easy, but how deep does that rock go? Um, which is about bullying. I see. Makes me think the well is that ocean, and it's becoming too deep, and she's giving up. Yeah, like we're throwing these things in. It's an easy action, but they go deep. It's sort of something cast off, but the meaning of it goes so far beyond that, right? Like a wish is easy to make, one might say. Um, but when a wish is not fulfilled, when a wish turns to be meaningless and it turns to be frivolous, maybe like the tears themselves, um, you end up with this much more, a much heavier reality. Um, Same with the tears, maybe, right? You can shed the tears, um, but then once they've like filled this well with salt water, there's a new meaning. That's a compelling interpretation. I like that. I've actually written a poem about exactly that, funnily enough. That's kind of cool.